If you have ever found yourself in the midst of playing Resident Evil 4, then the character of the merchant needs no introduction. He's the person that sells you weapons and pretty much all kinds of resources throughout the game. Except bullets, you cannot buy ammo from him. But anything else you need, he has it for the right price. And if you don't got the money, then your broke ass better go get some.
Got enough cash, stranger.
But what if I told you that merchant is not on your side? That he could not care less if you succeed in your mission, and that he most likely does not even have a business license. In order to understand all of this a bit better, we need to take a brief look at the history of Valdalobos, specifically at the invasion of Los Iluminados. We know that when Sadler and his cult appeared in the region, basically everyone was infected with the last Plagas parasite, and that actually includes the merchant. We know that the merchant is infected due to the fact that we can see his eyes glow red during the encounters with him every now and then. Interestingly enough though, the PRL 412 weapon does not harm him. It does not harm Ashley either. That is because it's not supposed to harm humans. The weapon merely removes the last Plagas parasite from the host. But once the Plaga assimilation is fully completed, the host cannot function without the parasite. So when the parasite gets removed from such host, it results in their death as well. So that could mean one of two things. Either that the merchant's assimilation with the Plaga is not fully complete, which would mean that he got infected either shortly before meeting Leon for the first time, or maybe even after meeting him, maybe sometimes in between their meetings. Or it could mean that merchant is carrying a special type of Plaga. We know that characters like Salazar, Mendez or Krauser were all carrying a special type of Plaga, and the PRL 412 did work on them, but it didn't kill them right away after the first shot. So based on that, we know that certain types of Plaga do have some kind of resilience against the PRL 412. Furthermore, we can only assume that the other evil residents of Valdalobos stayed consistent in regards to their occupation after being infected with Las Plagas. Basically meaning if someone was a farmer before being infected, they probably stayed a farmer after being infected, meaning the infrastructure of the village stayed the same, with a few exceptions of course. As I mentioned in my Dr. Salvador video, which by the way you should also watch, because it's really good I think, it is possible that Dr. Salvador did serve as a doctor in Valdalobos before the Los Iluminados came along, but he may have stopped after receiving a special type of Plaga, because there is no real evidence of the merchant ever existing in the region before the events of Resident Evil 4, as there are no documents ever mentioning him, nor any pieces of lore. I would think he was not in fact a merchant before. I mean, why would he even set up his operation in Valdalobos? In the first place, it seems like such a bad place for business. I mean, the resident seems to be rather poor, and nothing else but farmers. I mean, sure, he could definitely make some money here, as the village was cut from the outside world, which would present a lot of business opportunities for him. But I do not think him trading weapons would really take off before the invasion of Los Iluminados, which leads me to believe that the merchant indeed has received a special type of Plaga that I will call the Hustler Plaga. I believe that Sadler, when invading the village, knew that for his end goal to take over the world, he would need something a bit more than just a bunch of farmers. So Sadler infected the merchant with the Hustler Plaga as means to get weapons for himself. He would trade with the merchant for the weapons his soldiers would use. I mean, Leon even says it himself. At one point, seeing one of merchant's hideouts, he knows that the merchant has enough weaponry to supply a small army. In the island, we even see the soldiers using rocket launchers Sadler presumably purchased from the merchant. We can assume that's the case for all kinds of weaponry that the soldiers are using, and the merchant does not offer, for example, crossbows or maces or shields to Leon because he understands that Leon is willing to pay more for something more powerful, as he is alone on this mission and has the funding of the US government. So the merchant basically gets to make whatever offers he pleases to Leon, while being almost guaranteed to leave with at least some sort of financial gain. What I'm trying to say here is basically that the merchant is playing both sides, because many times we see him in places where he would be almost certain to encounter the cultists or the soldiers. They do nothing about him, simply because the economic structure within the region essentially makes the merchant a monopoly. So he gets to play both sides, and neither Sadler or Leon can really do anything about it. I mean, they both probably know that the merchant is playing both sides, but they simply respect the hustle. I mean, Sadler even mentions to Leon that it takes a lot of money to run the church.
Believe it or not, it takes quite a lot of money to keep this church up and running.
Though you can assume at least some of the money, probably a large amount, goes to the merchant for the weapons that Sadler is purchasing. I don't think Sadler originally intended for the merchant to supply also Leon or any of his enemies really, but the way that the hustler Plaga works is simply that if there is a business to be made, you can bet that merchant is gonna be there. And about how I said that the merchant probably does not have any official business license. Well, as I mentioned again in my Dr. Salvador video, there aren't really any educational centers in the region, nor any official centers. So I do not think he could get a business license there. But then again, merchant does actually speak English, so chances are he did leave the region at some point in his life, like Lewis has, to pursue a career in science or in law enforcement, depends on if we're talking strictly about the remake or about the original as well. I've been actually focusing more on the original, so I'm gonna stick to that. Then again, Salazar and Mendez also speak English, and I do not really think either of those has really left the region ever. You could say that since Salazar is royalty, he probably had some sort of higher education, but Mendez, he was the big cheese of the village, so maybe he did study on his own on various subjects. Maybe he saw it as his duty to be educated as the chief, but at the same time I do not really see why would he study English. For both of them, the ability to speak English could have been due to the Plaga. It's purely just a speculation, but if that's the case, then the merchant could probably also speak English also, just because of the Plaga. There's one problem with that, however, and that's the merchant's accent. He speaks with what sounds like an Australian accent, which seems strangely out of place. Which leads me to believe, after receiving the last Plagas, the merchant went on to get a business license out of the country, to Australia probably, where he adapted the accent, which at the end of the day means that he indeed has a business license. Anyway, I think that's it for today. This was actually more of a joke video. I did not even have any script or anything. I've been feeling a bit sick this week, had a fever and all, and I did mean to make the Resident Evil 3 color theory video that I said I was not going to make, and a large portion of that video is actually recorded, but I did make a couple of mistakes, so I might have to do some re-recording and re-editing. But yeah, let me know down in the comments what you think of the merchant, and I actually have a special offer for you, stranger. If you like and subscribe right now, you will receive a good feeling from supporting me. So yeah, thank you for watching, and see you later, alligator.